It did show a picture.
No, not that one. That one, the next one.
Oh, yeah. Conducted a very iconic concert in the 1970s.
And I'll need a picture of the old.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if they don't, yeah, they're not frightened of walking.
I think they still
Converging vertical.
And around, right at the bottom, underneath each one, you will see like a little frieze with seams on it. Victorian, and they all have had all of them have something to do. On this would have been in that area. Well, it's glad it didn't get very crowded. Buildings. Now, a shrine, we don't know what it was like, but it could have been used as that. Now, there were other and they were mostly local people. Now, Ethelbreda was made a saint, and so her
Sorry, big food.
coronation, like they did a big event. Do that 3 things, maybe 10:30. It was quite funny.
Oh, they had a big screen like that. Yeah. They had loads of screens. They did it really well.
Yeah. You know what, you wouldn't believe, you wouldn't believe the difference between working out.
Jak ktoś będzie musiał hamować ostrożnie i zobaczy, że już staną cię mają.
It's just, no, I said I thought we weren't changing the
lucky here. I haven't thrown it yet.